Yesterday, there was a historic peace deal signed between the United Arab Emirates and Israel. And this has the hardline anti-war pro-peace left furious. So why is the pro-peace left wing furious about a peace deal? Now, the obvious potential answer is you could say some Trump derangement syndrome. Donald Trump had an important role to play in this peace deal, and they just don't want to say anything good about anything Trump does, so therefore Trump did it, therefore it's bad. It could be standard Trump derangement syndrome. Now, for a full sort of explanation of the deep history, I did that on Laura Lynn Thompson's show yesterday, so I'm sure you can find that on YouTube. My actual thing I want to bring on here is, why is the left mad? You can talk about the Donald Trump stuff, right? It could be Trump derangement syndrome, but you need to actually really understand what the Palestinian narrative is and how that type of mentality has infected the modern left in the West. And this really illustrates it. So this peace deal is fantastic. It's really fantastic for both nations. It's great for world peace if you legitimately care about the world peace. So if you hate the UN, like, the UN's angry, so that's everything you need to know here. But not only was it a peace deal, it was a joint statement of like bilateral cooperation. So it's not just peace, but it's peace, trade, recognition, tourism, an actual alliance of the sorts. And UAE starts, and where you'll see Bahrain and Oman. Hopefully the rest of the Gulf comes soon. But this is massive, and the reason it's so massive is because the standard line towards Israel since 1967, well, since forever, is non-existent. So the reason, like, you might not know this, but Israel and Syria are actually currently at war. They're at war with Lebanon too, and Iraq. They've been at war since 1948. In 1948, also add in Jordan and Egypt, but they made separate peace deals in the 70s and the 80s. They declared war on Israel day one. Now, part of the reason why there's no peace treaty signed, no even armistice, is because all the Arab states and all the Islamic Organization cooperation, I mean, you get the Ayatollahs when he comes into Iran, they don't even acknowledge Israel exists. In 1967, after the 6 Days War, after Israel had the massive victory and gained all the territory, they offered all territorial gains back, including Gaza and West Bank, in exchange for peace, right? You get everything back in exchange for peace. The Arab League met in Khartoum and came up with three no's. No peace, no recognition, no negotiation. That's our terms. No peace, we're not going to recognize you, we're not going to negotiate. Just total war. That was a directive. And you saw this, after Israel took over the West Bank, lots of Palestinians started to flee. Moshe Dayan sent buses to bring the Palestinian Arabs back to say, don't worry, we're working on a peace deal. Don't worry. There's no way the Arab League will say no to this. They said no to it. But what did the Palestinians, I put Palestinians, one, because you could talk about the etymology of the word, but like also I don't consider the government representing the people, because the government's pretty horrible there. So the Palestinians withdrew their embassies from the UAE. So if you talk to Israel, we're not going to talk to you. Does this sound like the people really seeking peace? Right? So we're talking about non-existence. And then the final thing I'll go with is, just to fully understand the Israel issue right now, you have to understand that the current position from the Palestinian negotiators, government, and you can argue society, is complete and utter annihilation of the Jewish people. The Palestinian culture, the defining trait of Palestinian culture at this moment is a genocidal hatred of Jews. And I can say this because the government in Gaza, Hamas, is a terrorist organization. In their charter, they say they want to kill all the Jews. The moderate government in the West Bank, well, they have a program that pays you to kill Jews. They financially incentivize Jew murder. There's celebrations whenever they kill a teenager, right? So this is all very important part of the sort of peace process here. So I've been saying that anyone who's like, the two-state solution is dead now. The two-state solution was never alive. The two-state solution is idiotic. Anyone who talks about two states is just doesn't know the region. Because you can't combine Gaza and the West Bank into the same states. They've never been controlled by the same government, ever. Okay? They're not connected. That means you'd have to give two countries where the governments want to annihilate the entire Jewish population the right of free travel through the world's only Jewish nation. That's not going to happen. Okay? That's why, I mean, I'm not saying, talk about three states. If you want to talk, the two-state solution is only viable at a three-state thing. You can't have that. Now, why is the left so mad here? Because part of what the left has done is they have sort of kept these narratives so under-wrapped, and they've invested so heavily in the sort of anti-Zionist rhetoric, and a lot of the Israel issue is so heavily invested in a lot of bad ideas of the classical left. I mean, if Israel's got anything going for it, it's managed to debunk every left-wing mythology, ideology, or even thought, because Israel is a nation founded by Jews. Okay, my people aren't a lot like me in a lot of things. Okay, we're pretty far left. It means Israel's tried. It tried the kibbutzes, tried the socialism. The Labor Party is dead there. They've tried literally every left-wing impulse you can think of. They've tried it, and it's failed. Which is why the Netanyahu government is in, because he's just managed to protect them. But the reason why the left is angry at peace now is because it actually also, one, it undermines some of their fundamental assumptions about the world and people. You can negotiate from a position of strength. This is a big thing that the left doesn't like Israel doing, and doesn't like anyone else doing. But it's the reality of the Middle East. And the reason why Trump has brought peace to the region is because the Middle East functions a lot more like Trump's brain than ours. Okay? Trump is fire, fire, don't fire. Friend or fire, right? Says something nice, say something nice. Say something bad, I go 10 times harder on him. This is sort of Middle Eastern politics. Okay? You're never going to get concessions out of a Middle Eastern country from a position of weakness. Again, Israel tried that. As soon as they won wars, they offered everything back. It doesn't work, right? So what you're learning here is, one, the plans for Israel to say, you know what, we're going to go forward. If you're not going to negotiate with us, we're just going to annex parts of this and apply Israeli sovereignty to Israeli land. Like, we're not going to deal with this anymore. We're just going ahead, right? That forced people's hands into negotiating with you, which the left doesn't want to do, because it wants to live in this little world where you can keep giving away and giving away, giving away, right? There's also this massive narrative that they kind of want to keep going. I mean, this isn't so much the left, but this is more Islamists and you can say Palestinian activists, but they want to sort of create this narrative that the entire Arab world is so morally opposed to Israel and is so in love with the Palestinians and the righteousness of their cause, which isn't true. Like, the Gulf states don't care about Palestinians. They don't care about Israel. The only really people who care about Israel are Islamists and leftist Westerners. Like, those are the Israel's like biggest enemies. So the other thing, and you see this, is it really shows Obama's failures, which is what a lot of people don't want to recognize here. And in a sense, you can actually credit Obama with this in a weird way, and I've made the argument before, because Obama's foreign policy was so terrible and so empowering to Iran, who's such a bad actor. He actually did force the Gulf states and Israel into a position where they actually had to be more openly allied with each other, just to combat the threats that Barack Obama had put into the world. So if you want to say it's Barack Obama's work that created this peace deal, like, I'm not going to argue with you, but you have to then say, because he was so terrible and he made everyone in the Middle East feel like the world might end because of what Obama did, that they actually had to start cooperating and working together because Obama was such a childish idiot. If you want to make that argument, I'll go for it. So I love the fact that everyone, Rashad Tlaib, is so upset and talking about Trump and Netanyahu and whatever. But if all you need to know, though, is this is a great thing. One, if you like peace, if you like world peace, and you don't want to hear about Israel and Palestinians, you just want to hear about Canada and America, wherever you are, it's good, because this calms down deflation of tension. It means you have to hear and less and deal with it less. If Israel talking to UAE, fine, that's good for you. The other good thing you need to know is there is a massive amount of critical race theory, gender theories, Middle Eastern studies professors who are freaking out right now, because if things progress as they do currently in the Middle East, we're on a trajectory in about 2 years where every so-called expert on TV or Middle East studies professor will look like a fool, and I rue the day that comes. I will love it. Yeah, see you then.